Welcome to the Small Church Podcast, the podcast for church leaders who want to make a difference in their communities. We're your hosts, Tony Marr and Bruce Montgomery, and we're excited to be with you today. On this podcast, we'll be discussing the latest trends, strategies, and ideas for effective leadership in small-sized churches. So whether you're a pastor, a ministry leader, or a volunteer, this podcast is for you. Each week, we'll bring you interviews with experienced church leaders who have valuable insights to share. We'll also explore topics like team building, community outreach, spiritual growth, and much more. So if you're looking for practical advice and inspiration to help you lead your church with excellence, you've come to the right place. The Small Church Podcast is brought to you by Higher Ministries. Higher Ministries is an organization that exists to help Christian leaders in the churches they serve through coaching and consulting, all for little or no cost. For more information on Higher Ministries or to find out more about the Small Church Podcast, please visit higherministries.com. Thanks for tuning into this week's edition of the Small Church Podcast. Welcome to the Small Church Podcast. I'm your host, Tony Marr, and I am here with my friend, Robert Kell. Now, Robert, you have been a guest on the Small Church Podcast before, but now you're stepping into a different role as coming on as a host of the Small Church Podcast. And so it's great to have you in a different role here this morning.
Yeah, it's fun. I'm jealous of Bruce. I feel like I'm getting to kind of feel what he experiences. I'm only retired. I just do podcasts and go to Florida like twice a year. So that's what I want to do.
You pretty much have Bruce nailed. And for those of you that are excited to be hearing Robert right now, but disappointed that Bruce isn't on with us, Bruce is enjoying his retirement. He will be back with us again next week, but he wasn't able to make it this week as he is traveling at some portion of the United States. I think that right now he is in the Great Smoky Mountains of East Tennessee, probably enjoying Dollywood. And Robert, you and I have talked. You're a big fan of Dollywood as well.
I am. I mean, Dolly for president. I mean, let's do this thing. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, did you know that I had season passes to Dollywood when I lived in Las Vegas? That's how big of a Dolly Parton fan I am. So you can say Dolly for president, but did you have season passes when you lived 2,000 miles away?
No, I have not. I haven't lived 2,000 miles away, and I haven't had season passes the whole time then. So no, but it's a fun place. I mean, they're doing a lot to make it better, and it's really good for our area, our neck of the woods up here. So
it is. And did you know that since this is the Small Church Podcast, that they will often give discounts and have special events for ministry leaders?
No, I did not.
Yep, it doesn't happen all the time. You can't just call and say, hey, give me a free ticket to Dollywood. But they do run special events throughout the year, special times where they will give discounts for Christian leaders.
Well, now I know, and I'll have to watch my emails more closely.
There you go. Yeah, so Robert, you do a lot with church, working with churches, different churches, doing different kind of marketing things, design things. And so we're excited today to have a guest that is an expert in church marketing with us this morning.
Yeah, I mean, like the thing I've enjoyed about looking through Justin's site and what he's doing for churches is he really speaks into a space that I don't understand as well. So I'm actually excited to learn when he's talking about all the different ways to do marketing in small churches, that you can find funding and that you can get resources. And I think his organization, his ministry is doing a lot to help churches. So I'm excited to learn and to be able to chat with him today.
Yeah, before we jump into Justin, church marketing has always been a really touchy subject for a lot of people. I can remember back many years ago when I was in undergrad college, coming from the West Coast, and my home church that I grew up in, Central Christian Church in Las Vegas, was a booming church. At the time, they were running probably 5,000-6,000 people, doing a lot of things that many churches were not doing. And I had a professor in Bible college that told me that we were selling out the church and selling out the gospel because of some of the things that we were doing. And I can remember leaving and going from my classroom into my dorm room and walking the 3 flights of stairs up to my dorm room, getting on and calling my pastor back home and saying, here's what my professor just said to me. And almost on the verge of tears. It was as everything that he'd said discredited everything that I had grown up with. And going so far as to say the Holy Spirit is not present in your church because of the things that you guys are doing. And yet, over the last 25 years, that mindset has changed so much, where I think most churches now, most church leaders now, and hopefully even a lot of Bible college and seminary professors would say that there are tools that we can utilize as church leaders to increase our reach, to increase our impact on our communities and on the kingdom of God.
Yeah, and that was a serious phone call too, because back then it would have had to been collect or you were paying for it. It was
1010-811. You remember 1010-8, the dime line? Yeah. I lived off 1010-811.
And it's always hard. Like I heard somebody the other day making a big push that like watching the chosen is a sin. That show shouldn't be made. And just everyone sees marketing and sees representing the church and talking about scripture outside of the way they feel comfortable with as bad or wrong. A lot of times, not all the time, but I think this is a good conversation to have. It's a great way to help small churches influence their communities because people are online. I mean, I've been on Facebook and Instagram this morning. I mean, it's people are in that space, they're seeing things, and when you're doing it correctly, it gives a lot of opportunity.
So with that, I'm so excited to welcome in our guest, church marketing expert, fellow podcaster, Justin Nava. Justin, welcome to the Small Church Podcast. We are honored to have you with us. How are you this morning in Houston, Texas?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me, Tony. Thanks for being here, Robert, as well. Robert, I expect you to keep me honest. And for everyone listening, if you don't know who I am, I take full responsibility for that. My name is Justin Nava. I wouldn't call myself an expert. I kind of make fun of some experts. I'm more alongside other churches doing this journey together, doing what we know works. And that's what I'm going to share with you here today is what's working for small churches. Specifically, we work with churches in America, but if you're international listening to this, I hope you can still pull some golden nuggets from this as well.
So, Justin, most of our audience are leaders in small churches. We kind of categorize that as 150 or less on average attendance, but we don't tell people that if you have more than 150, you're not allowed to listen to our podcast. And I've talked with several people over the last couple of weeks and months that come from much larger churches that are tuning in and getting a lot of information out of what we're talking about, more specifically our guests than anything that we have to say. And so why don't you take just a minute and tell us a little bit of your background, your story. How did you get to where you're at now, to where you're doing marketing and trying to help churches and as you told me earlier, predominantly smaller churches?
Yeah, I appreciate for the chance to share that. So I grew up with the testimony I think we all want for our kids. I was fourth generation in my church. People knew my name just because they knew my grandparents and great grandparents. And I got to grow up, going to Sunday school. I surrendered my life to Christ in my early teens. One Super Bowl Sunday, everything just clicked for me. I knelt beside my bed, and I prayed for Jesus' eternal forgiveness and accepted him into my heart. Got baptized a few weeks later. Surrendered to the ministry in high school at camp and went to Bible college, small Bible college, studying church music. And while I was there, I was doing a music internship at my church for the youth specifically. We were about 300 at that church in Killeen, Texas. And as I was doing the music stuff, especially with the youth, we knew that we wanted youth to be a part of that. It was a volunteer opportunity for our students to grow in their spiritual walk by leading worship. Eventually, it got to the point where we developed a whole student band that ran itself. And so I'm just sitting there twiddling my thumbs. And I said, well, what else can I do? Because music internship, like I can oversee the band, but I want them to be free, right? I want them to have the liberty to do what they want. We'll correct them if they do something wrong, but they were doing amazing work. I mean, fantastic student musicians. So we started doing some more media stuff in the youth. We would play more games like Upstage. This was before Kahoot, and we would do like fancy PowerPoint Family Feud stuff, and we'd have different weekends. We would have entire activities going on throughout the youth, and we'd do skits. And eventually we formed a student drama group, and then we started doing videos. And we realized this stuff is really communicating with our kids sometimes even better than worship music was. So we really kind of leaned into that. And so I went from music intern to more media intern. And then in 2011, I was about to get married, and I had to have a talk with my pastor and was like, look, I'm about to get married. I need a full-time job. I need a full-time paying job. And literally a month before I got married, the IT guy at our church, IT media guy at our church and private school left. And they said, well, we can offer you this position because you know the media stuff. So that's when I became full-time, and my first job was to fix our website. This was back again, 2011. I'm coming in wide-eyed, like I know media, I know how to fix my computer. I had no idea what networking was, how internet worked. That was an experience for me, firewalling and stuff, because I was also running a private school. So we had some student information and stuff I had to figure out. But alongside that, I had to learn how to do our website. And we were using Microsoft Front Page, and I had no idea what I was doing. And the only thing we knew, I think it was called Front Page, the only thing we knew was that it wasn't working and it didn't have pictures of our people on it. So I studied. And I spent thousands of dollars of church budget on courses. I even went to the local college for a marketing class, and that was pointless. And built several websites in the course of a half year. But eventually we settled on one we were happy with, and we launched it. Now, every quarter at this church, we had a new members orientation. So everyone that joined that quarter, we'd invite them to lunch, and we'd have a more like meet the pastors kind of environment and kind of learn more about the new members that we haven't had an opportunity to connect with yet. The quarter after we launched the new website, 13 families joined the church. And for us, that was a lot. That was probably the best quarter we had since maybe the 90s. And at one point during the lunch, pastor stood up and said, "Hey, I'd love for everyone to introduce themselves to the room and share what brought you to Memorial." That was our church. And 12, I remember counting, all but one. I wish I could say everyone, but 12 families in introducing themselves had mentioned our website as a reason they came to our church. They said that they saw that there were people here that were like them. They saw that it was a safe place for their kids. They enjoyed watching the teaching. Remember, this is 2012 now. Online teaching was not a thing at that time. But we had some clips of our service and preaching on the website. So they said they saw that and they could understand and they liked the pastor. And then we also had stories from our church. So they said, we really saw that God was moving. It was a good mix of some church transplants, I guess you would call them, like people coming from other churches, and then some people that were joining a church for the first time, getting baptized and all that. So at that point, it was like, all right, Justin's doing something right here. I knew I was onto something. Now, fast forward a little bit later that year, I think our lead pastor got called away to a different church in Maryland, and he called me a couple months later and was like, "Hey, whatever you did for your church, can you do for my church as well?" So I built him a new website, and this is when I got my first freelance check. $500 for an entire website. I was ecstatic. And I remember I spent a lot of late nights trying to get this just right for him. And the same thing happened. We launched it and people were looking for churches or looking for answers online, found his church website and were coming to his church. And it was an amazing experience. And that's when I kind of was like, okay, well, maybe this can become something. So I started studying more about website design and took some more website design courses now that I knew what I was going to do. But then 2015, 2016, everyone has websites. Everyone has good websites now. You got to do something to stand out. And that's when I started learning what search engine optimization was. It's not enough just to have a website. You got to know how to get people to it. You got to know how to rank above others. So when people are searching for churches, they see your church and not the false teaching church, right? So there was a lot of competition out there. Not that we're competing with churches, but I think we should be competing with churches that we know are false teachers in our community. So how do we get more people to see our church? Then I learned that you can't just rely on free marketing all the time. You got to pay to play. So then I learned about advertising. And 2019, my wife graduated grad school. She was able to take a full-time job at a hospital. Our insurance was now taken care of. I got to quit my job, go freelance full-time. And at that point, I realized I'm just one person. I can only serve so many people. And this thing is America needs to know that the local church is still for them and wants to serve them. There's so much bad press out there from pastors who abuse their staff, their congregation, from people that are church hurt, whether righteously or not, and just lots of anger that's out there. And the churches here, especially the small churches that are doing such good works, just don't know how to rise above that noise. And so I said, I need to build a team because I can't do this all on my own. And I was like very anti-agency model at that time. I just felt like it wasn't the best thing. And then I had a mentor that said, you can build a business however you want. You don't have to build it like everyone else's. So after trying to join some other agencies and work into a partnership, I ended up starting my own Nava Church Marketing January of 2021. And we created the definitive church marketing method. It is specifically for small churches. We don't market it as such, but our average client is between 75 and 120 starting out. Usually by the end of year one, they've grown by 30 to 40 to 50 people. One church went from 3 guests a month to now 30 a month, and they're just exploding. And that's not all because of what we do, but it is one part of that God uses us plus internal mindset shifts, plus internal vision casting to really grow these churches. And so that's what I've been doing now since 2021. And hey, that was way longer than I planned it to, but I wanted everyone here to know before you tune me out, um, this show and my program and my agency and everything that I'm about to share is for the small church, 120 and below, even 120 to 200. Because that's our average client size, and so that's my experience and what works, and that's honestly where my heart is. Once the church gets to 300, you need to hire your own person like I was and go and be awesome. But if you're below that and you want some help rising above the noise in your community and to be better known, then because everyone should know where the local church is, then that's what we're going to talk about today.
That's great. Just we've talked a lot in previous episodes of this show that one of the biggest issues that many churches have that keep them from growing is a internal mindset that they're happy with where they are, or they think that people should come to the church rather than the church coming to them. And if you look throughout scripture, it's God pursuing us. He is constantly pursuing us, coming after us, doing everything that he can to reach us. And so this idea of the church staying within their doors, and you heard my story of my situation with my professor from college who's saying that church marketing was basically selling out the church. How do we change the mindset, especially in smaller, more traditionally minded churches, that no, there are things that you need to do, that evangelism can go beyond, taking your pamphlets and your Bibles and going and standing on the corner. There are ways that we can reach people to get them into our doors that have turned to the corner of technology, and that you need to embrace some of these things and first accept the fact that as a church that we are called to reach people, and so we need to do some things differently to change that mindset.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. Again, we are primarily focused on U.S. churches because our culture is so unique. I can argue with other people about this, but I don't think we're post-Christian, post-modern yet, but we're certainly in that transition period. And so because of that, what we've done to get to this point, 50 years ago, driveways were empty on Sunday. Restaurants and businesses were closed until Sunday afternoon because there was no business beforehand, and school activities on weekends and Wednesday nights were unheard of. They were unthinkable. And nowadays, it's like, well, if I want to have a shot at making varsity, I have to go to Wednesday night practice. I can't go. I even had a guy on my college football team. He was like, the coach said, like, if you're gonna if you're gonna go to this funeral, your family's funeral, then you go to B team practice because you're not going to be on varsity, right? Like that's not a Bible college, right?
Yeah.
So that's the culture has changed, and so imagine like you invite someone to a restaurant and they say, "Oh, what is that? What is that?" Or you invite them to a restaurant and they say, "Oh, I've heard about that. I've never been, but I keep seeing things about it." Blah, blah, blah. Right? Like the restaurant is not doing the inviting themselves. You are. And the fact that the restaurant has put the legwork in to put out advertisements, to put out notifications or whatever, someone's heard about it and it makes that invite easier. Now, we experience this a lot of times with businesses and restaurants. We should also be able to experience this with church. And this is why we have to change a little bit our perception of what church marketing is. It does not, and this is why I had to start this business, it does not replace the personal invite. No matter what we do, how great your marketing and promotion skills and advertising skills are, and millions of dollars you spend, 85% of people are going to choose to come to church because of a personal invite, okay? So take it from a church marketing guy. The church marketing, at least the way that we do it, is not here to replace the impersonal invite. It's here to enhance it, meaning when your congregation does share Jesus, it's not the first time they've heard about it because they've seen little breadcrumbs that we've laid out for them on behalf of the church. When they're invited to church or even an event, it's not, oh, First Baptist, that's weird. Or I hear often, Second Baptist, like, oh, what happened to the first one, But when you invite them to Second Baptist or First Baptist, say, oh, I've heard about that place. Actually, I listened to an interview. I saw it on the news. I read about it in the paper. Pastor was on a podcast I listened to. I saw a thing on Facebook. I actually sent them a message and they prayed for me. It's much easier to make that invite so your congregation can be better equipped, not just with invite cards, but really with a warm contact, we call it, in that this isn't the first time you've heard of our church, and it's a weird thing that I'm inviting you to. It's actually, hey, this is something cool that's happening. God's doing amazing things. And by the way, you've already seen it. So how about you come be a part of it? It just makes the invite that much easier. And in a way, it enhances the discipleship process as well, because it just allows those conversations to take place, again, not in a cold environment, but in a way that the person is kind of warmed up to. This is a place that's actually here to support the community, serve the community, and help you find a greater purpose, nay, the perfect purpose in life through perfect salvation. So that's really what we have to get our head around. And I'll agree with the professor, actually. Most church marketing efforts, and there are some good ones out there, but many things that churches try to do, they're kitschy, they're nichey, they're just trying to get people in for a fun show. I don't like that. It needs to be in the context of the mission of the church, in building relationships that can lead to discipleship. That's what real church marketing can do to help us share the gospel more and grow the kingdom, not just to get butts and seats so we can increase our salary. It's to share the gospel and make it even easier in today's American culture to get people to pay attention and say, all right, I'll give you 2 minutes of my time so you can share the gospel with them.
I love that. That's great. Justin, I had a meeting with a church just last week, just a few days ago, that a small, very small, dying church in our area here that we went and had an initial meeting with them to see how we could come alongside them and maybe help them turn some pages, do some things differently. And I met with their elders, a small board of elders, and a couple of them took me on a tour of the church. They're showing me, they're bragging about the fact that we walk into their sanctuary, and they brag about the fact that they don't have any TVs or projectors, that they're still going on the hymnals. And they said it's not that we have anything against it, it's just this is what we prefer. And then we're sitting down and we're talking through some things. And one of the initial things that we look through is what is your budget? How are you spending? And they we're excited. This church, they do have a Facebook page, but they do not have a website at all. And they were still spending 720. This is going to blow your mind. Maybe not. This completely blew my mind. They were still spending $725 a quarter for a yellow page ad in the phone book. I didn't even know that we still had phone books. And yet they were paying $725 a quarter for a church that was struggling to pay their electric bill. And if you had the opportunity to talk to these church leaders, how would you get them to understand the importance of creating an online presence, maybe thinking of their marketing dollars being allocated in a different way that's a little bit more impactful and useful?
That's a really good situation. I love this because this really goes into another philosophy that I have, which is every church is uniquely equipped to uniquely reach a unique group of people. And I fully believe that that church, even though they're dying, the reason they're dying is not because they don't have screens, and it's not because they're spending $720 on the yellow pages. It's because they're not communicating what their church actually is. I'll tell you this, my dad is yearning for a church like that where he lives, because there ain't no church like that. It's all flashy screens and lasers. And he tells me almost every week, I just want a church like the one I grew up with, right? And he would love to have a church like that. But if that church is not doing whatever it takes to reach people like my dad, who now, when he's looking for a restaurant, he goes to Google Maps. When he's looking for information, he goes to Google. If he's on the TV, he's using his Roku talkie, whatever, voice activation or something like that. If that church is not where people like him are searching, they're never going to find him. Meaning, they're just going to reach people that don't want to go to a church like that. They're going to reach people who order the yellow pages or actually read the yellow pages, and guess what? Statistically, they're already going to be a part of a church. So they're not going to go to that church, right? And then they're not going to reach the people where they're looking to actually say, here we are. This is a place that you can be welcomed. And I actually have two clients that I lovingly call boomer churches, because they look and say, we are right next to a retirement community. We don't have a nursery. Or actually, they do have a nursery, but they don't have a kids ministry. We don't have a youth ministry. We do read out of hymnals. This is who our church is equipped to serve, because we live in a culture where all the other churches are foregoing the 60 plus generation to try to chase young families. They're feeling left behind. And in a world where the entire culture says, who cares about you? you have it so easy. We're going to go do our own thing, forget about you. How much more hurtful it is when their own church forgets about them as well. And so these churches are uniquely equipped to reach that boomer generation. And based on your description of this church, I want to say hypothetical, but it's an actual church you talk to, I would look at, is this something you're truly proud of because you want to stay in your way, or because you believe that God has uniquely equipped your church to reach people who want this environment?
Yeah.
I think a lot of times in Protestant circles, and especially or even non-denominational circles, we say, who would want to go to a church like that? And we forget that like the Catholic Church and Orthodox churches still exist, where they don't have screens, or if they do have a screen, it's very static pro-presenter slides, and yet people are coming to this church by the thousands because there's still some kind of errant mystery of God.
Absolutely.
It's not errant, but an air of mystery of God, to where they can say, you know what, we worship this grandiose, holy and glorifying entity that created us and created everything and died for us, and isn't this something that it becomes bigger than us? Whereas the church, we shrink it down to become the same size as us. So all that to say, if I was talking to this church, and let's say we did agree, you know what, I'm not going to tell you to get screens. I'm not going to tell you to get new sound systems. I'm not going to tell you to do anything. I'm not going to even tell you to live stream, although I like live streaming. I'm not going to tell you to do that. I'm going to say, what kind of person would want to come to a church like this? And what kind of person could your church effectively serve to equip to be a disciple maker, so they can go out and make disciples, either in the context of church or not? And then once we figure out who that kind of person is, who this person they're equipped to serve is, then we figure out, okay, now, how does this person, whether they just move in, whether they just had a fight with their spouse, or whether their kids went to juvie for the third time because they can't get things out in control, they feel like their life is spinning out of control. There's got to be something that it can solve all this and help ease the pain that they're feeling that they haven't discovered before. Maybe they think they feel the pull of God, or they think back to the church they grew up. They're going to give it a second chance. Where are they going to find you? Or where are they that you can reach out to them and say, we hear you, we understand you, and we have something for you? Not a gift, not a mug, Jesus, right? And then we do whatever it takes to get on those platforms. And it's most of the time going to be Google, Facebook, especially for that older crowd, um, local publications, local media, et cetera. And then we actually craft a message that that kind of person is going to hear, feel understood, and want to take a next step with. I think that's what we often ignore, is we don't look at, even though we say, I appreciate you guys for letting me talk so much. We look at, how do we get people to come to us? We don't look at, how can we go to people? And we keep saying the church is more than four walls. The church is the people. And yet all we do when we go out and tell people is, hey, come to our building at this certain time. And if that's all you communicate, well, that's all they're going to think you are.
Right.
And so we have to make this shift from what do we need to do to tell more people about our church, to what do we need to do to tell more people about Jesus? And our church is a context in which they have that relationship. So that's what I would look at, is who are we equipped to serve? And I honestly, I probably wouldn't take that church on as a client, because marketing is not going to save a dying church. They have to at least be stagnant, right? They got to stop the decline.
Sure.
And then bring people into that. Because again, you're not going to want to go to a restaurant that the AC is broke, the wait staff are just waiting to get their last paycheck, and the food, they're not ordering fresh food because the restaurant's going to go under next week. No one's going to go to that restaurant. You want to go to one that at least has a core group of people. So that's what I would say to them, is let's figure out who you're equipped to serve, where those people are, and then what can we do to bring Jesus to those people, again, within the context of church.
You talked about search engine optimization. I sat in a online seminar a couple of weeks ago, not related to church, about something else that I have some vacation rental properties. And so it was talking about how to boost your bookings on Airbnb and booking.com. And the guy who was leading it made a statement that was so elementary, so simple, and yet was completely eye opening to me, very profound. That he said, when is the last time that you searched for something on Google and have gone past the first page? And he said, probably never. And And he was saying, so we've got to get you on the first page. You've got to be on the first page of Google. You've got to be on the first page of Airbnb. You brought something into that I think was even more important, and that's that we've got to get our churches that are teaching truth, that are communicating the gospel effectively and actively trying to reach people ahead of those that maybe have a very different message. So how do you work with a church that maybe doesn't have a massive budget for, you know, boosting their Google profile and all of that? How do you work with the church to help them to get to that first page or boost their visibility on search engines and on the World Wide Web?
Sure. So you have to understand everything is a puzzle piece that we do as a church when it comes to promoting and marketing and all that. If I hold up a blue puzzle piece, you don't know, you can guess, but you don't know, is it the ocean? Is it the sky? Is it someone's shirt? Right? Now, when I put a few more puzzle pieces, you see some blue with some streaks of white. Okay, you're starting to get a better picture, but is it the ocean and the white is like cresting waves? Is it the sky and the white is cloud streaks? Maybe it still is some dude's shirt. It's a Hawaiian shirt and it's got some design on it, right? It isn't until I start fitting together multiple puzzle pieces that you actually see the entire picture. And this is where church marketing, again, has gone so awry, is that everyone is selling a puzzle piece and says, this is the entire picture. So you buy that puzzle piece, you put it out in front of everyone, and you say, look at this. Isn't this great? Can't you tell who we are? And they say, I don't know what that is, because we've only invested in one puzzle piece. SEO is kind of the same thing. This is why I had to eventually create the definitive church marketing method. It's how we get churches to be noticed, to be better known, to go from unknown to best known. And it is a service, right? We do it for them, because you can't just get one puzzle piece and expect it to do all the work. So, for example, let's say you do rank your church websites to the top page of Google, to the very front. It's big and beautiful. Let's say even Google says, hey, let's forget everything else and let's only put this church right here front and center. If you have done nothing else, you are going to see no results. Why? Because they're going to click that link and it's going to take your website 10 seconds to load. Okay, the average person is going to wait 3 seconds. Then they're going to form their first impression in 1.7 seconds. All right. So that's already like you've got one puzzle piece, but guess what? Another one's missing. So people are bouncing out. Let's say they do click through there and your website loads fast. They come to your site and they see everything that your church is doing, like prayer groups and submitted prayer requests and Bible studies and Sunday service. And we got stuff for your kids and watch the sermon here live on Sundays at 11. And they see all this stuff and they don't know what to do. Right? I've never been to church. What is a prayer study? I thought you just talk to God. Like, we got to study this now? Okay, let me get out of here. Because you didn't create an easy path for them to take. Now they're out of there. Are they going to remember you? Or are you just another part of the church noise that says, hey, look at us, look at how great we are, don't you want to be a part of us? So even just ranking number one on Google does not mean you're going to start tripling your church guests, because there is an entire process that has to be built upon so that when you are on Google top spot, which, by the way, we rank our clients 3 times on the first page of Google. All right, we can talk about that in a second. You need to have a captivating message, so that when they see your church, they don't say, oh, great, another church. They say, tell me more, right? When they go to your website, they don't see, that's a pretty website. They say, I want that. And when they click on something of their website, it's not informational, it's inspirational, meaning it's not about the church, but it's how do I fit into this grander journey that this church is on? And this church, by the way, has the authority to teach me this. And then what happens after that, right? Okay, let's say I plan a visit. Well, it's Wednesday. I'm going to forget you in 10 minutes. And then Sunday comes. Am I going to remember to go to church, or am I going to have it as a kind of thing in the back of my head? I say all this because all these puzzle pieces, and I'll share with you how to rank at the top of Google, but all these puzzle pieces fit together. So just because you try one puzzle piece doesn't mean you're going to experience an entire shift and change in how people know your church. It's an entire puzzle piece. Now, to go back to you, ranking top of Google, let's remember Google's purpose. Google's purpose is to provide the best, most authoritative information to answer people's questions that they're searching for on Google. So if they're searching for a church near me, Google's going to check a couple of things. Number one, is it a church? Number two, is it near this person's location? And number three, do we think that this is the best answer? Meaning, I don't want to show them things that aren't churches, that are maybe just fellowships or small groups. I don't want to show them things that I'm not sure is a church. So I know churches talk about Jesus. So maybe if this website doesn't mention Jesus, I don't know if it's a church. So they're going to refer the best, what they think is the best, most authoritative sites to the top. So you have to do a couple of things. Number one, you have to intentionally create your website in a way that Google's going to like, but also people like. Go for the people first, and then fit in Google with that. But you got to do things like, have your address at the bottom, put a map at the bottom. If you want to go advanced, do schema markup. You've got to do proper meta tags and meta descriptions and keyword tagging and all this. So that way Google knows you're a church, you're an authoritative church, and people actually care about your church because the ones that do come to your site are actually using the site. Google is monitoring the people that come to your site and then leave without doing anything. And the higher that percentage is, the less it's going to rank you. So you got to have a website that gets people to take action. Then you can do things like claim your Google business profile, submit to local directories, Yelp, Uber, Nextdoor. That's just to name a few. There's like 80 of them. Submit to Christian directories. Church Angel, Gospel Coalition has one. There's another one that I can't think of off the top of my head. Now, once you have all these directories referencing your church, your address, your phone number, you have an updated Google business profile that has answers to common questions and positive reviews that don't just say, I wouldn't get 5-star reviews that say, funny pastor, friendly people, welcoming church. Everyone knows pastor's wife wrote that review. You need to get reviews that say, I was lost, but now I'm found thanks to this church. Now I have a higher purpose. I'm drinking that everlasting water. Whatever that testimonial is, that's what should be in the reviews, because people will see themselves in that review. So now that you've got this entire ecosystem that's working together, everything is pointing to your church. People are talking about your church. People are reviewing your church with meaningful descriptions, and you're actually providing information about how your church can help people. Guess what? You become the most authoritative source in your community, and Google's going to rank you number one because it knows you're going to help the person searching for a church near them the most.
Wow, that's great. I just want to throw this out really quick because we haven't said this yet. If you're listening to the show right now and you're thinking, wow, I need to rewind that right now and take some notes, you need to reach out to Justin. You can do that at Nava Church Marketing, NAVA churchmarketing.com, or tune into his podcast. How often is your podcast? Do you do that weekly?
Yeah, once a week.
Once a week. Justin, I want to not push back, but revisit something that you just said in what you were just saying. You talked about how your website needs to be inspirational, not informational. Robert and I just had a conversation last week about this kind of the opposite way, that one of my big pet peeves is going to a church website that looks great. Oh man, you get on, they've got great videos, they've got great messages that are popping up all over, and the church website looks great, but you can't find anywhere on that website where their services are and what time they are. And I have the opportunity with my family that if I'm not teaching somewhere, we like to go visit other churches and just see what they're doing. And the number of times that I've gone on to a website and cannot find anywhere on their website what time their services are, and the lack of information, I can't go to your church because I don't know where your church is or what time your church meets.
Yeah, absolutely. They are not dichotomies. Is that the right word? It's not a binary. You have to choose either one, right? Because if you don't have local church service times and address, and what do I do when I get there? You're not a church website. You're just a Christian website. And then maybe it's fine. But yeah, you're right. Now, I'm not saying don't put any information out there. You're a local church. You need to not be a Christian Bible blog. You need to be a local church website. That said, no one's going to come to your church because your service is Sunday at 10:30. All right. No one's walking around saying, oh, I wish there was a church service that met Sundays at 10:30. That's not going to persuade someone, right? Paul said God calls them, we persuade them. That's not going to persuade someone to go to your church or to choose your church when they're looking for one, or even if they're on the fence and you just say, welcome home. Well, guess what? Home's not a safe place for a lot of people. What does that mean? I don't know what a good welcoming home is. Or your new church family. Sounds cultish, dude. Like, we need to have our message honed in to speak to people where they are so they can see that we understand where they are. Maybe we've been where they are, and we invite them to come alongside us because we found a better answer, or I should say, more perfect answer. And again, that's why I keep saying in the context of the local church, meaning if I come to your church website and it says, hey, Sundays at 11, deliverance service, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. That fails what I call the mother-in-law test. Love my mother-in-law. She loves us. The only time she's ever been in a church was on our wedding day. We've shared the gospel with her. She's okay going to hell. That's just where she is. But she's always on my mind when we do work. And I tell my team this too. She needs to be able to understand anything we write for churches or anything churches write. So if you say deliverance service, she's not going to know what that means. Now, fast forward to what we did with that site, where instead of Sundays at 11, deliverance service, it becomes the world has its boot on your neck and you're out of answers. There's one more waiting for you, and we want to introduce you to him. Sundays at 11, right? You show that that's not the exact message, but we show that we understand. Look, you're on your last strike at work. Your pantry is empty. You're sleeping on the couch. Your kids are hellraisers. Everything you've tried hasn't worked so far. And there is something better because we have people that have been where you are and are now living better, serving better, giving better, and just living more abundantly. Now that we show that we understand them, now we can invite them. Right. So, and that's where you have to come up with that message, because again, if you just open up your website and it says disciples making disciples, look, that's a great mission. That's a great mindset. That is absolutely why your church exists. But no one's walking around or staying up at night, can't sleep, tossing and turning. Oh, why won't someone make me a disciple? Right. You're not meeting people where they are emotionally, mentally. You're, again, putting yourself on a stool and saying, hey, don't you want to be up here with us? So we have to, it's a fine line, but we have to, show that we understand. We have to empathize with them. And then with that empathy, we gain their attention, or I should say we garner their attention, we earn it. And then we can invite them. And more people will come with that invite because we've shown that we understand where they are. We've been where they are, and we're worth listening to. Otherwise, we're just going to come across as a bullhorn. And like you said, there's got to be an end goal. There has to be a next step. All right. It makes no sense for a local business to say, hey, don't you want a new weed whacker? And then you don't tell people where you're located, how much the weed whacker is, or what's going on with that. So at the same time, it's, yeah, don't you need Jesus? Like, yeah, we understand we need Jesus. We can help you. We want to serve you. We want to minister to your family. Take this one step. Come to church on Sunday or watch this online service, whatever that one step is, but give them something to do and then make it super, super easy for them to do that, because it's hard to go to church. I mean, a lot of times we forget what it's like to go to a new building and be surrounded by a bunch of people doing cultish stuff. Yeah, okay, yeah. Standing up, praying, talking to an invisible sky god, singing these words about oceans and kisses and love and surrendering, and it's kind of weird. And then we sit down and watch this stranger talk for 30 minutes and tell a joke every once in a while. And then we stand up again and sing. And I'm just describing a typical Baptist service, but like, that's weird. And let's just call it what it is. It's weird. What we believe sometimes to the world is a little weird. And so we need to make it as super easy to take, because guess what? People are doing even more weird things for the sake of relationships, weight loss, and wealth gain, right? So it's super easy for them to do that stuff. So let's make it easy for them to come and experience Jesus, to learn about Jesus. And I'm not saying Jesus is easy. The walk with Jesus is hard, right? Millions of people are persecuted every day. But when they're feeling that call of God, let's make it easy to invite them wherever they are, in whatever context that they're in.
Thanks for joining us for part 1 of our interview with Justin Nava of Nava Church Marketing. If you'd like more information about Justin and what his organization does, follow his podcast at the Best Known Church Podcast at any platform where you listen to those. If you'd like more information about Higher Ministries, you can find more there on higherministries.com.